All right. Well, the chat, I think the attendance is in the chat. Um, and I'm gonna let Brian do the upcoming events
All
and
right,
polls.
so tonight, thanks everybody for coming out. Tonight is our annual student internship panel, and I'll introduce the panelists in a second. Um, Next week we have Steve Cook from Northrop Grumman coming to speak, and he's also, um, what is he for, like the Carolina AIAA section?
He's the regional VP. So the Carolina section has a president, and then they actually like dole it out to different like sections too. So he's like the Raleigh VP.
Yes.
Yeah.
So come out to hear about that. And then the next week we have Mike Hamill or Hamel. Do we know how to pronounce it yet? I don't know, but either way, he's coming from Lockheed Martin. So we've got some cool events on the horizon. Oh, whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay. Here we go. Here are the panelists tonight. So and this is also the order that we'll go around the horn for the questions. So I guess, do you guys want to introduce yourself? Joey first.
Yeah, sure. What's up? I'm Joey. I'm a senior in aerospace engineering, and I interned over the summer at Northrop Grumman out in Los Angeles. And we'll talk more about that in a second, I guess. Yeah.
All right, Grant.
Yeah, I'm Grant Stevenson, also senior in aerospace, and I've spent my last 2 summers out at Cherry Point Marine Base at Navarre.
All right, Kyle.
What's up, guys? I'm Kyle. I'm a junior in aerospace, and I spent my past summer at Da Vinci Aerospace, which is a smaller firm in Greensboro, North Carolina.
And Carissa.
I am Carissa. I'm a senior in aerospace. 2 summers ago, I spent my summer with NASA Langley, and this past summer had COVID not happened, I would have been working for the Navy in Dahlgren. So, yeah.
All right. So our first question, what steps did you take to get your internship or co-op? And how would you describe the application and hiring process? So we'll start with you, Joey.
Yeah, so basically I kind of wasn't able to secure an internship in between my sophomore and junior year. So I completely like redid my kind of method of going at trying to get an internship, and basically applied to a ton. I mean, I made a spreadsheet of everything, which I suggest doing to kind of keep track of everything, but applied to over 100 different positions, which I know can sound kind of like a lot, but as you're going through, a lot of companies have a lot of different things that are very similar to each other, and some of the application processes online are kind of streamlined. So I just went through and signed and applied to almost every position that I found that I was interested in addition to reaching out to recruiters on either LinkedIn or at the career fairs, using NC State's pool of resources, which is actually very helpful. I didn't realize until I started going about that, and using the Career Development Center here. But basically applying online to stuff and trying to set up phone calls, maybe not interviews, but just phone calls like, hey, can I, talk to you about what goes on in your company? What do you do day to day? I might be interested in that. People love talking about that. So yeah, that's what I did. Hiring, the application and hiring process at Northrop, it kind of depends on which location you're going to be going in, which project you'd be on. But for myself, it was online, and it started off with phone call that I got and to schedule an interview, and then had the interview. And then after that, it was kind of searching around for places that they had open that aligned with my interests. And then moving on to that, once we found somewhere that I could go in, it was just, your regular paperwork and figuring out, job description, and then moving on from that to actually the start date.
Yeah. Cool.
Mine was a lot easier, fortunately. there was a NAVAIR speaker my sophomore year that came to AIAA, and I just stayed after to talk to the two guys that had come, and I apparently made a good impression on them. Just offered to help carry their stuff out to their car. So they asked me to apply, and sure enough, I got the job. I applied to a bunch of different ones this past summer, but due to COVID, that's why I wound back up at NAVAIR. All the other stuff kind of got canceled. But the one thing that was weird is I'd never had an interview to get the position. It was just kind of given to me. So I can't really speak on the hiring process too much. I just showed up one day and that was that.
All right.
Cool. So for mine was pretty unique. So mine was local to me in Greensboro. So I actually had found out about the company. It was about 2 years old, and I started emailing people that worked there. I emailed the head of the engineering, the head of R&D, and he got back to me. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're actually thinking about doing an internship for NC State students." So it turns out I was number one on the docket, and then because I had already reached out to him for a position through Rural Works. If you don't know what Rural Works is, check it out. It's an NC State program where they basically, the company will pay half your salary and the NC State will pay the other half your salary for rural places. Greensboro is like the third biggest city in the state, so it wasn't actually very rural, but it worked out for me. It was 20 minutes from home, so it was a pretty sweet deal. Hiring process for me, it was sort of more like Grant. I had an informal interview, and it was kind of like, hey, looks pretty good. I'll let you know, and it worked out even due to COVID. So that's how mine happened. It was more of a touch base through email, and it worked out.
So mine was definitely kind of weird. I went through the normal like NASA internship portal. It's pretty easy to find. It's like internships.nasa.gov or something like that. And I went through those like normal steps of like, I think you can apply to like 12 different actual internships. And then, you have like letters of recommendation and all the rest of the kind of like a normal application. And then I found out from a different contact at Langley that they have a different position called the aeronautics research intern, and they had like a ton of these positions but no description whatsoever. So I was definitely kind of weirded out by that, and I decided I wasn't going to apply, and then I was told that I should apply, so I did. And the person who kind of runs that program is not like through the normal like NASA internship thing. In terms of funding, like she has a grant separately with a local school called CNU, and so like people apply directly to like the aeronautics research intern. And then what she basically did was that since I wasn't 21, this was following my sophomore year, I couldn't do the aeronautics research. Like they have a totally different thing. If you have any questions, ask Hannah Oliver. She did that last summer. And so she handed my resume and a bunch of other people's resume off to this other person in a branch that was looking for an intern, and he just happened to choose mine. So there was no like interview process or anything like that. It was actually pretty resume based, which kind of turned out interestingly. And I'll talk more about that later. But the hiring process is definitely one where you can use your connections and just finding any other information that you can, really, because that had no data. Like it had absolutely nothing that they were looking for, and most positions on that portal have like what typical interns do or what they're looking for you to do, what skills they want you to have, and then like the academic level, and this pretty much had nothing. So it was definitely kind of a leap of faith on this one.
I actually have another addition to make to mine. So I applied through USA Jobs, which is a great resource if you're trying to work for the government. And that's where all of the agencies go through their applications. So if that interests you, I'd take a look at it. They have a whole bunch of internships all over the country pretty easily. That's about it.
right. So question 2, what did you do to prepare for your first day of work?
All right. So honestly, not too much like schoolwork wise. I didn't like review anything or go over stuff. I didn't exactly know what I was going to be doing when I first went in there. So I didn't know how to prepare in that regard. But besides that, I mean, it was uh in Space Park in Redondo Beach. So I had to, figure out where I was going to live for the summer and then find roommates and all of that, which ended up being a lot less stressful than I thought it was going to be because they set up a whole thing with all of the other interns that were going to be at the same location as I was. So we were able to figure out, and I ended up living with some really cool guys. But outside of, what do I need to bring to move across the country for the summer, there wasn't really too much. So yeah, I don't really have too much to say about that one.
Yeah, I'm right about in the same boat. I had no idea what I would be doing. I did research on the helicopter that I'd be working on, repairs on the H-53. So I also didn't know anything about engines, which is what I did in my first summer. So I learned what the parts of an engine are and how it all kind of runs together. But other than that, not really much. I brought my lunch and showed up.
So for me, I knew I was going to be doing a lot of SolidWorks at first. So I kind of got my SolidWorks skills a little bit sharper. I found a good tutorial website on YouTube and followed his tutorials, sort of like a GC 120 on steroids review for probably a month before I went. So it was nice just get a refresher, figure out what I was going to be doing, that kind of thing. And yeah, just like Grant, packed a lunch, showed up, and they're very helpful. You go in blind and it's fine.
Gonna have to echo most other people here. Fortunately, I did have the opportunity to intern following my junior year of high school at Langley as well. So I was pretty familiar with just like the overall culture and like what people wear type thing at Langley. They're definitely not the dressiest of wearers. And, like I kind of knew in that sense what to go in expecting, but definitely kind of did the same thing. I emailed my mentor a few days before, since I was in a kind of a recently renovated building. I know the doors were all kind of odd, so I talked to him about that. And I just had to go through the normal, like NASA has like a Saturn training thing, and it's just like what they put all their interns through for like security purposes and go through like gate check and all that stuff. So just kind of went through the normal, what time do you want me to get there and all that type of thing. My mentor was incredible, had very non-expectations. Like he didn't really say anything. So you kind of had to facilitate a lot of it yourself, which made things a little interesting on the first day, but just kind of the normal show up and see how it goes type thing.
Yeah, I'd like to add, make sure you get there early on the first day. It's just kind of like settle your nerves and stuff. I ended up getting there an hour early because we planned to have all of this insane traffic that was going to take a long time to get, but COVID made it so that there was no traffic. So I just rolled up and sat in the parking lot for 45 minutes before, I didn't know what to do. But still definitely get there early. You want to know where you're going and what to do.
Also, casual Friday does not mean you can wear a t-shirt to work. I found that out. Not how that,
Fun
not how
fact
that
that
operates.
on my first day, I saw somebody wearing jeans and a t-shirt, like a big t-shirt. And I was like, all right, here we go. I did not wear that to work. Most people did not wear that to work. But on our Fridays, we have Hawaiian Shirt Friday. And the entire base does it. It's a whole thing.
I like that.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
All right, question 3. What type of projects were you working on, and what did your average workday look like?
All right. So I supported a thermal team that worked under the flight sciences department in the aeronautics sector of Northrop Grumman. So What that means is that I was working with some guys that were on a project that is essentially the intended replacement for the F-18. So what they needed to do, it's very early in proposal phases right now. So they're running like design analysis and kind of optimization type things. So they I came to them, I guess, and they were like, hey, we need a tool to help speed up the amount of time that it takes to size a RAM duct circuit. And so what I did was kind of use MATLAB to create a GUI and then a tool that would solve for mass flow characteristics through a RAM duct circuit using like, Arrow2, a lot of Arrow2, using Thermo, using MATLAB stuff, and kind of going back, and this took him a lot of time and wasn't like a very small project. A lot of people at Northrop kind of will get smaller sub projects, and then once they finish that, they'll move on to another one and then another one after that. But I had one the entire time that I was there. So this was a larger project, but basically it allowed for the engineers that were on my team to not have to do all these calculations by hand, which was taking an incredible amount of time. They could just kind of input their design parameters into my tool, and it would spit out some mass flow characteristics at them so they could go back and determine what component's causing the most pressure drop or what needs to be resized, that kind of thing. So that was really cool. My average day kind of consisted of, it was a little boring, I'm not going to lie. And a lot of that I do attribute to COVID. I didn't have a lot of collaboration or interaction just because, so I had to go in on site, and a lot of interns got moved to remote. So the area that I worked in, I got a nice little desk next to a window, but there wasn't really anybody else there. So I didn't see day to day my team because a lot of them were remote. My manager I did see occasionally, but he wasn't kind of breathing over my shoulder to kind of, help guide me on this thing. That was more of something that we did through Skype. So I'd come in, check my emails, kind of figure out what I needed to do, either pick back up on what I was finishing off yesterday or starting a next step in the project. And then, separate my day out into the tasks that I needed to complete. Halfway through, go get lunch with some of my friends, my roommates, other people that I had met, and then kind of go back, sometimes move around and work at other people's desks to kind of, have a little teamwork type things. But a lot of it was very monotonous in that it was just writing code and, debugging and figuring out what was going on. But it was still very cool, and I enjoyed it.
Hey, Joey, quick question. So you said you were in the thermal team at Space Park, right?
Right.
Did you know another engineer there named Dylan Rounds by any chance?
I did not. Was he an intern or worked there full time or?
No, he worked there full time. He was just someone that I worked with at El Segundo 2 years ago, and I knew that he transferred out to Space Park for thermal. So
I was supposed to be at El Segundo actually, but I ended up getting moved to Space Park to be closer to my manager, which didn't even matter because I only met with my manager like bi-weekly. But either way, Space Park was really cool. But I don't know. I mean, maybe if you knew what project he was on, I don't know, or what program he was supporting.
He's on a black program. So.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah, that was another thing. Nobody can talk about anything that's going on there because everything's closed, and they're all like, "Oh, this is the coolest thing," but I can't tell you about it. I'm like, "Well, why did you tell me it was the coolest thing?"
Yeah.
So, for those who don't know, Navigator does helicopter repairs for the naval and marine fleets. So, I spent my 2 summers doing engine repairs and structural repairs. My average day really varied depending on what type of issues we were having. So on base specifically, they had helicopters that were there for routine maintenance or if they were really badly damaged. So in those cases, the projects would take a few days to a few weeks to implement changes. So what we'd be doing is we'd be studying what damage is done, what materials we can use to replace or repair the damage. And a lot of my day was spent writing instructions of how to actually repair it, because there's manuals that tell people how to do it, but they don't tell you how to do the math behind what repairs, then the material given to us and give out directions for people. So that was the majority of what I did, and then made changes to the manual as well, because it's an ever living document. It wasn't, sometimes we're definitely boring, that's for sure. Trying to make changes to a 1,000-something word manual isn't the most exciting stuff out there. But yeah.
Cool. So my company did a lot of sort of like what Grant did. We would get a project from various companies or the government and say, hey, here's this problem, try to fix it. So my bigger project was taking this helicopter generator stator. They had two bushings, one on each end, that were kind of fatigued and defective. So our goal was to say, hey, what's the problem here? How do we get them off? How do we fix them, reproduce them, and put them back on? So instead of throwing away the $60,000 part, it was, hey, can we make a $500 fix, replace it, upsell it to make money? So that was our goal. And that was sort of the goal in a lot of projects that we did, sort of reverse engineering the problem and manufacturing the piece and put it back on. So that was what I did. And my daily work was kind of check my emails, catch up with my boss. We worked in the same room, and it was a really cool environment. So I had no problem asking them, and don't be afraid to ask your superiors. They're always down to help you. So just kind of talked to him and did a lot of hands-on activity, which I was really appreciative for. It wasn't as monotonous as like Joey's experience on MATLAB, but also was far less complex. So.
So I worked in the safety critical avionics systems branch, which was a very computer science and avionics based branch. And, you know, coming out of sophomore year, I didn't really know that much about electronics, let alone many aero things. So I was actually reviewing for this thing. I was looking at like my end of summer presentation, and I'm realizing now it was a lot simpler than I thought it was at the time. But at the time, it was very overwhelming. And so kind of the projects that we were focusing on were you know, with urban air mobility rising like in interest all the time, we're kind of looking at battery consumption and like ideal power consumption. And so it looks like the drones were dying faster than we were planning on them dying. So we kind of tested the DJI S1000. We did not have the opportunity to fly them because we were not certified, but I pretty much just got a ton of data from them, and they had pretty messy data organization systems. So I was the one who went through years and years of drone data and kind of put that together. And then I started using power and like efficiency equations to calculate how our drones were doing pretty much. But besides that, we also just kind of got tasked with a lot of like reviewing papers or making diagrams for them and that type of a thing. So my day-to-day definitely changed a lot, pretty much just depending on whatever my mentor had me doing at the time, and how the people down in the lab were doing too. So that definitely changed. But in addition to that, I also got the opportunity to volunteer with like a few like kids camps that Langley was hosting. They were building like little robots and that type of stuff. So we would leave and kind of help out with that. And then they would have, it was the summer of Apollo's 50th anniversary as well. So they had so many like Apollo seminars and just like really neat trainings and like fun fact type things that were happening. So at least once a week, we would go to an Apollo documentary every Friday, and then, which was a nice way to end the week, and then go to whatever seminar is talking at the same time too, just to kind of get moving from our building. So yeah.
All right, question number 4. Which experiences, whether they're in school or outside of school, helped you the most in preparation for your job or during your job?
Real quick before I answer that, something that Chris has kind of sparked something in my head. But one of the things that I did really enjoy that Northrop had to offer was they call them lunch and learns, which a lot of places have. Normally they'd be in person, but this past summer they did a lot of them online. Really cool things, a lot of like experts in their field just talking about some really interesting things that they did, and you get to zoom into those and listen to what they had to say. Or there was another thing that Northrop really encourages doing is informational interviews. And you manager and just pick their brains about everything that they've done, their career path, and get some advice, anything along that lines, which was very cool. Definitely take advantage of that. Any opportunity to get like that. But yeah, so for experiences academic wise, I definitely say, number one, my education. I wouldn't have anything. I have no idea what was going on without having taken Aero 2, which I thought about a lot because I know some people that had worked at Northrop in between their sophomore and junior years, and I was like, man, if I got placed on this project, I would have absolutely no idea what was going on. But that's beside the point, because they do kind of anticipate you coming in without a lot of knowledge. They didn't even know that I was going to know how to use MATLAB, so I don't know what kind of learning curve that might have been if it wasn't the programming language that state teaches us here. But definitely MATLAB, Aero 2, some CFD stuff. Thermo was very intensive in that, but also kind of communication skills. Knowing kind of how to present yourself in a professional setting, how to give presentations and kind of take feedback and critiques and stuff like that. That's very helpful and helped me a lot in kind of, starting some professional relationships with like my manager and my mentors, rather than going in having everything be like very informal and casual. That's like another thing that you want to focus your effort on building your professional character, which really helps you stand out among other people that might be there in the same situation as you. So definitely that helped. And Northrop has a lot of resources in terms of how to build yourself professionally, and almost TED Talks on the best way to present yourself in a professional setting, professional etiquette, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah.
So things that helped me, obviously my structures, classes, and statics, that was the entirety of my second summer. But what Joey said is being able to work as a team and be professional about it was really the number one thing that helped me, because you need to be able to communicate what you're thinking and communicate with people that may not have the same education as you do.
For me, the biggest things I mentioned already. Were you still going, Grant?
That would be the most. Am I lagging badly?
A little bit.
Yeah, you're lagging like a
think
little
you're
bit. My
back.
bad.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay, we'll work on that.
You want me to go, Grant, while you work on that?
Oh yeah, you're all good.
All right, sweet. So for me, I mentioned already, it was GC 120 was huge for me. A little bit of MATLAB. Actually, English 331 kind of helped a little bit. I did quite a bit of technical writing for manuals, or kind of conveying information from a manufacturing perspective to an engineering perspective, because a lot of the jargon's lost. So you have to be able to kind of articulate yourself in a universal way, I guess.
So looking back on this, a class that probably would have been super helpful would be controls, but I'm a senior, it's been 2 years, and now I'm finally learning the material. So that would have been nice to know when I went in. But the other big thing that definitely helped was just Aero Lab. It's just having to go through and have a lot of data and equations that you need to use, and using MATLAB to do that. So that definitely came in handy. That was one thing I actually felt like I really actually could help them out with, which was nice. And just going to emphasize the communication and professional skills as well, because my branch was definitely not a teamwork branch at all. Everything was super separate. There was not that much communication, and it definitely made work kind of difficult. And so you had to kind of know when to speak up and when to ask different questions, or when to ask for more things to do, because sometimes there's not as much going on. So definitely meeting other people was also helpful, which is why you can help out with different things and go do different things on center at the same time as well, not just work in your branch. So meeting all those people and being willing to speak and willing to, talk to others and learn about where they go to school and that type of thing, definitely made my experience a lot better.
Grant, did you have anything else, or are we good to go to the next question?
What all did you guys hear?
Most of it, I think.
Yeah,
Okay,
about most of it.
I'll just say it's fine then.
Okay, sounds good.
Okay.
All right, question number 5. During your internship, what was the largest challenge that you had to overcome?
For me, so the way I kind of work is I do a lot of work in like short bursts. I don't know, it's just in between classes or at night, in the morning, kind of whatever it is. But at a job, it's kind of like, early about 5 o'clock, working the entire time. We need a groove to really get into, okay, this is how I want to time my day out. And this is when I'm, working the most. And I took advantage of the sit-stand desk that I had, because I was just like, could not sit at the chair the entire time. But figuring out how to make the best out of my experience with COVID, because I attribute a lot of things that I think about it to COVID, because it would have been completely different without that. But the challenge definitely, everything was working out fine. I was flying through stuff. So yeah.
My greatest challenge would be my writing skills. I've never been a great writer, and trying to create instructions all day and write them out was challenging for me at first. But fortunately, through many failed attempts, I learned what they were looking for, and I've since significantly improved my writing abilities. Also, was that better in terms of lag? Did that fix it or no?
Yeah, you were clear. For me, my largest challenge that I had to overcome was just balancing workload. The place I worked, there was one engineer who was full-time. They had a couple part-time, just more of investors. So he had a lot of little projects that kind of got thrown on my lap. It was like 6 or 7 of them on the first day. And I was pretty overwhelmed, but it was that my biggest challenge was just trying to figure out how to divide and conquer, essentially, and ask the right questions to the right people to help me get it done.
So I guess I had 2 things as challenges. The first one was just the material, like I mentioned earlier. I definitely had to do a lot of research and like try to figure out like what controlled area network buses are and that type of thing, which for an aero person who didn't have any experience with electronics, it was a little overwhelming, because my mentor, the one person that they do work with who's kind of leading the entire project, was in aerospace, and he was really, really good at the stuff that they were doing, and he expected me to be too. And so coming out of sophomore year, especially, like I really didn't have that much experience. Like looking at the efficiency equations that I use, those are ones that we're learning in propulsion right now. So things like that were definitely pretty difficult, just because I just had to kind of look up everything that I had to do. The second thing was just kind of the people in the branch. there wasn't that much communication and everything was very separate. Most people in my branch left or arrived later than I did, and left earlier than I did. They were pretty much there between like 10 and 2, which was really odd for an intern because you didn't really have anyone you could ask questions to when you needed to. And my mentor was just in kind of one of the states that can happen, in that when you've been working in a government job for a while, they can't necessarily fire you. And so he didn't have too much of a drive or a lot of enthusiasm about certain things. And so I kind of had to go hunt, for different things that I was doing. And it just kind of made things a little bit difficult sometimes. But it was definitely kind of a good learning experience by the end of it as well. Just kind of having to deal with different people. So the cubicle spacing was quite interesting, but we had a lot of very large windows, and we could see a lot of the storms roll in. And so me and a few other coworkers, we would all like happen to see each other just like looking at the storms across like the entire building together. And so we had some good bonding moments over weather. But yeah.
Right. Question number 6. What is one thing that you learned from your internship experience? I guess one thing that you haven't told us already.
So for me, I would say that working in the industry as an aerospace engineer does not mean that you are, and well, does not mean that you are only going to be working on aerospace things. And the same goes for mechanical, the same goes for systems and industrial, chemical, whatever it is. The industry is set up in a way that like you will adapt to, or not even adapt, but you will gain knowledge in so many different fields, that throughout your career you'll just become an all-around engineer. Sometimes you'll have specializations in some different things, but from what I could tell, engineering is so wide-ranging and well-rounded, that you really pool your knowledge and work together with so many people that it just you come together as one well-rounded engineer. And I really thought that was kind of cool because I was working with people who were not anywhere close to aerospace. A lot of computer science people, a lot of mechanical still, but not aerospace. And the level of knowledge that they had about some very complex aerospace topics, I was very surprised by. But then also the necessity for me to learn how to connect aerospace topics to things that aren't, systems is very much systems integration, and that's very wide ranging in terms of mechanical and electrical and all of that stuff. And your knowledge base is really built up based off of the projects and the experiences that you have, and throughout your career it's going to be so wide ranging that you will just become good at doing a whole bunch of different things, which I thought was very, very cool. Yeah.
The greatest thing that I learned from mine was definitely how to work a 40-hour week. It is a very, very different lifestyle than being a student. And it forces you to be an adult where you have to cook dinner every night instead of just going to a dining hall. And I think that was one of the things that definitely matured me. I'm not ready for a 40-hour week right now. I need to go to grad school. That's also what it taught me.
I feel that same thing, Grant. I'm not ready for it either. So I did 4 10s actually. They were allowed me to do 4 10s. I just worked 10 hours straight, no break, kind of ate as I went. So those 10 hours sucked, but it was sweet to have a 3-day weekend. So that's an option. Consider it. So one thing that I learned from mine, so half of my company was manufacturing, half was engineering. So I learned quite a bit about how to connect those. I definitely didn't grow up as the kid with his dad who played in the garage, fixing the car. I had such limited mechanical knowledge, and I learned quite a bit about the mechanical engineering side of the world and just basic manufacturing, lathes, mills, all that good stuff. It's kind of the basis for the things we do. So if we create this awesome product, but if a manufacturing guy looks at it and says, dude, this is not possible. It's kind of humbling as an engineer to learn that side of it. So that's what I learned.
So I guess kind of going back is one of the big things. Well, first I'm gonna, emphasize what Joey said, and that everything is definitely very connected. And so, knowing that lift and drag and all this stuff doesn't really work when you're trying to apply it to an entire project. And like knowing how things are interrelated and all that was definitely really, really neat. But kind of the big thing I learned is just don't be afraid to like speak up about whatever you're, trying to figure out. Because I learned at the very last day that I should have had access to data that bunches of people told me that I shouldn't have had access to. And I didn't even know because I didn't know like the questions or even that I should have had access to it. And that definitely would have made my internship experience a lot different. It definitely, it's worth talking to whoever you're trying to, do work with. Like my mentor definitely wasn't the greatest, but our project manager was really, really neat. And so he tried to get us all involved in that type of thing. So don't be afraid to like go talk to different people. You're not just stuck here under your mentor. And if you need to go do something else or like go to a seminar, go to anything like that, like don't hesitate to ask, because they're more than likely going to tell you like totally like go for it. They're probably going to encourage you to keep learning about that type of stuff. So that, and just don't be afraid to talk to the older people that you're working with as well. They definitely have a ton of experience and a lot of really, really neat stories. And so even though what they're doing might not seem as interesting and that type of stuff, they really have like some advice to give. I know like one of the guys who works in my branch, he like was working with the Saturn V shake test that was across the street. And I had absolutely no idea that's what the building was. I've seen that building my entire life and I've never known that. And he just could talk all about it all the time. So definitely some really neat things that you can learn just by talking to different people and like leaving kind of your branch and taking the opportunities that they do give you while you're there.
All right. So the last question that we have prepared is, what did you like most about your job or company, and what did you like the least?
Real quick, can you guys hear me? I think my internet cut out in the middle of that one. So
Yeah, you're good.
you can hear me. All right. Yeah, the thing that I liked the most about it was really all the cool stuff, learning about all the different projects. I got to see some very cool things while I was there. They have at Space Park, the James Webb Space Telescope is currently there in one of the warehouse space that they have. So my manager kind of took me up in there and could look down into from the high bay viewing area, and you could look down into all the people running around in the bunny suits with this big old golden telescope and everything that was going on there. I got to walk up and for aerospace type news. It's all really cool for everything that was going on, and I really liked being around a bunch of like-minded. I like the there, if a problem done. So that was really inspiring to kind of build yourself as an engineer and as a person as well. I can't say too much. I mean, I definitely like the East Coast more than the West Coast. I would say it's a bit of a culture shock. And then, COVID kind of prevented me from having some and become your science people, which was fine and very cool. But I would rather have been around people that I could have been able to talk directly about, what was going on in my project, because computer science people didn't really have any idea what I was talking about. But yeah, that's what I would say for that question.
So my favorite thing had to have been living at the beach. Cherry Point is right next to Moorhead and Atlantic Beach. So living there was pretty great. I cannot lie. I also liked that it was a very hands-on job. We were able to go look at the helicopters and everything on the daily if we wanted to. All it took was a few-minute walk. And as for what I didn't like about the job, I wasn't exactly challenged fully. Um, what I was doing was slightly remedial in my mind. I don't, it might just not be for me. I might be more of a developmental than a post-developmental type person, but I didn't really vibe with the type of work that we were doing there. But yeah, overall, living at the beach is nice. Would recommend it.
Well, for me, what I liked the most about my company was sort of like the personal atmosphere. The first day, there's probably less than 20 people that work there. So first day, I know everybody's name, they know mine. It was a really the CEO was an ex Air Force pilot, wounded veteran, and so he didn't sugarcoat anything, dropped a lot of f bombs. So the entire atmosphere was like you walk around the corner, you can just flick off your coworker type thing. Everybody dressed in t-shirts and jeans. It was a very unique atmosphere. To be able to say the F word to the CEO of a company is kind of weird. I enjoyed it because I felt like I was in a college dorm, but I learned unfortunately that's not how most companies work. So that kind of stinks. As Joey was saying, his is far more straight lined, as it's Northrop, obviously. So what did I like the least? I guess it didn't truly prepare me for the professional world. However, I did have meetings with people outside of Da Vinci Aerospace. So yes, I did get some professional experience from it. Yeah.
So I guess what I really liked, just in general about NASA was just everybody is encouraged just to constantly keep learning. And with all these seminars and Apollo things and like all the history that is at NASA Langley was just really, really neat. And they were constantly like encouraging us to go to these things. And so if you had any questions or if you had any like tours that you really wanted to go on or anything like that, like you could absolutely find whoever is working on that and go ask them about it, and they'll take you on a tour, they'll take you on anything, which was really, really neat. Just kind of be in an atmosphere where they were all kind of on the same page and interested in all these different things, and like just kind of seeing a lot of the different things that you can do with an aerospace degree, or honestly with any degree, because they hire anyone depending on what you're looking for. And so the other really neat thing is that the F-22 demo team is at the like Langley Air Force Base, which I was right across the street from the hangar that connects NASA Langley and Langley Air Force Base. And so the F-22s would literally go vertical above my building and it would shake the entire thing, and it would be the best thing ever. And so at lunch or anytime I would hear them, I would just go downstairs and watch all the planes outside, which definitely probably entertained a lot of the computer science people who were in my building and had no interest in it whatsoever. But it was really, really neat. And probably what I liked the least is that there were some times just of like lagging, like not as much stuff to do. And so I felt like I definitely did have some empty time where I literally didn't know what to do. And I would ask my mentor and I would ask people. And I didn't want to bug them by asking them either. And so you kind of had to find that difference between the two. And that's where those different connections came in. Going back to what I did like is that my mom does work on base and she has a lot of connections from other people on base as well. And so I could just kind of go to different people that I knew from over the years and see what they were working on and kind of look at what they were doing and just kind of be there and kind of learn more. So that was really, really neat. The freedom to go to like look at different things was definitely really cool. And even though you didn't have building access to most of it, like they'll do their best to kind of get you in and see how you can do with that type of thing. So that was really, really neat.
Oh, we have one more question, and that's what advice do you guys have for everyone that's currently applying for internships or co-ops?
First thing that I would say is do not give up. It feels like, there's an endless amount of things, especially right now with companies not wanting to hire, or, COVID and everything. Don't give up. There's a position out there for everybody. There's a company out there. You just got to find the right thing and keep putting effort into it. It's very easy to put this on the back burner, but it just ends up being stressful later on in the semester. So I'd say definitely, stick with doing it as early on as you can, because the earlier that you can do it, the earlier you can forget about it and not have to worry about that. It's just, don't let it pile up in the back of your head. I would also say, go to the career fair. And even if, you're looking around, like I know our career fair is specifically for aerospace. It's not the best. We don't have like all of the, brand name aerospace companies that everybody wants to go work for. You don't have to go there with the intent of like, okay, I need to get a job. Go there for practice. Go there to talk to these people about your experiences, about your education, and to kind of figure out what people in the industry might want to ask you, so that when you find something along the lines of a company that you want to work for, you are prepared in what you have to offer. You've gone through that spiel, 5 or 6 times. The Career Development Center offers mock interviews. I did one of those. The lady gave me phenomenal feedback. I felt so much better going into it after that. Use all of your resources. This isn't something that you should be, or at least I felt it wasn't something that I, could barely put any effort in. It had to be a lot of effort, and I wanted to make sure that I used all of the resources, exhausted every single, piece of energy that I had towards, making sure that I felt like I did the most to get the position that I wanted. So I would just encourage you to make sure that you're using your resources and reach out to people. Your connections are everything. Even beyond internships, your connections are absolutely everything. And people love talking about what they do. So pick their brains, talk to as many people as you can, just try to make a good impression, because you never know when that connection is going to benefit you in the future. So yeah.
Furthering off the connections thing, I don't know if anybody has used MAE Connect. It's always at the bottom of the emails that they send. Fantastic website. It's really easy. All you have to do is, if you know a company that you like, just shoot a message out there. Hey, does anybody have experience at this company? You get to learn about it, and generally, if they're on that website, they are looking to help other students just like you get a job. I know that it's helped me tremendously over this past year. I've made some great connections, and I can't emphasize it enough. Just talk to people. They'll help you out if you even just treat them nicely. They know there's not much you can do to help them, but yeah.
So my biggest advice is to hold on to contacts, sort of like Joey was saying about networking. But my first good aerospace contact came in high school. It was my dental hygienist's son had an aerospace company. And so I kept that in mind. I got his number. I talked to him in high school, and I just kind of kept in contact with him. So actually this past summer, I had an internship with him in Alabama. That one fell through due to COVID. So I was lucky enough to kind of get a backup plan, the one that I worked for Da Vinci. But just hold on to contacts, because you never know how they're going to work out and how the chips are going to fall.
So I guess one of the big things that stood out to me is that don't be afraid to apply for internships or co-ops that you might not be completely qualified for. They always list like what they're looking for and like academic level and all that type of thing. And you might still get it even though you're not completely qualified. And that's like perfectly okay. And that's pretty good actually. And so don't hesitate to apply for things that you just aren't totally sure about. The other thing would just be kind of, again, use those connections, seeing everything that other people have done was definitely really, really neat. And I like kind of looking at what Grant did, talking to people at Navair. I did the same thing my sophomore year, and that's why I got an interview for them later with the SMART program. And so I actually talked to him, the guy who interviewed me the next year too, because he came back. And so using those connections that you have and like just reaching out, like don't hesitate to say anything, because the people that you work with or that you even just met briefly or anything like that, most of the time they're pretty excited to connect again. And so kind of emphasizing connections again here, but yeah, it's huge. And so if you have any connections or anyone who has connections, use those, and if not, go to LinkedIn. It's another really good way to reach out to people.
All right, so I believe now that's all the questions that we have. So if anybody has any other questions that we didn't get to ask the panelists, you can ask one directly. You can ask all the panelists. You can put in the chat. You can unmute. It's really whatever you want. And in case anybody didn't fill it out, Kyle just put in the link for the attendance.
Grant, can we see your Brussels sprouts?
It's a bad situation. They are black.
Oh no.
Demonstrate that they match the color of the pan.
Oh, they're just a little crispy. You'll be okay.
I'm still gonna eat them. I bought them. I cooked them.
So you gotta eat them. Another thing I guess I would just put out there is that I know, at least for me, and I don't know about Kyle, Joey, and Grant, but if you guys have any questions, whether it's about like our specific internship like company or anything like that, like you're more than welcome to email us, or you could email AIAA too, and we can definitely get your question to other people as well. And looking at Ian's thing, no, internships typically aren't salaried, but it definitely kind of depends the way that they get their funding for interns.
I actually thought that the majority of them were salaried. I don't know about Grant or Joey, but mine was salaried.
Yeah, mine was salary as well, but
I was hourly. I was not salaried.
My bad on that. Yeah.
I was a stipend, so that was totally weird though on my own part.
Like a single stipend?
What? You froze.
So I think I cut out. How did they do the stipend? They did
It was weird.
Stipend?
It was literally just like a check. And so every few, like, because they didn't want us to work longer than what we were, like over 40 weeks. And so as long as we would hit the 40 weeks, they don't really care where we were. But that was also just because of the way that the like aeronautics research interns got their funding through the grant rather than normal NASA interns. And there are different things too, not just normal NASA interns in the aeronautics research program. So.
Ian, to answer your question about traveling to other states, organizing apartment and arrangements. So Northrop does this thing where if you're 50 miles outside the work location, they do give you a relocation stipend, which is nice. So you can kind of use that to figure out how to get your things out there and where you're going to live. They put me in a group message with it was probably like 300-ish other interns that were going to be at the site that I was at. So I kind of reached out, and some of the people, like everybody put a little greeting and their thing, and I like reached out to the people. I was like, okay, this person sounds normal, and I was like, hey, do you have housing yet? I was kind of late to the game too, so a lot of them did have housing already, and I was kind of scrambling, but it ended up working out to where the group of guys that I talked to through GroupMe that Northrop had set up was really cool, and I enjoyed living with them. But finding where we were going to live, we just got an extended Airbnb in Venice, actually, that was very fun. I can echo Grant on how fun it was living at the beach, because Venice is an interesting place. But yeah, that was more on your own, aside from being put in that group message.
What was your commute like, Joey?
It was 12 minutes. I would unheard of in Los Angeles, because like the 405 is the most congested freeway or whatever outside of maybe DC. I was flying down that thing, going from like Venice to Redondo Beach, where there was no commute time, and everybody was like, don't get used to this, this is not how it is. But yeah, it really was not bad at all.
That's amazing. Yeah, ours were definitely.
Oh, I'm sorry, I just cut you off.
No, you're good. Go ahead, Grant.
I personally have the same setup as Joey. We had the internship manager kind of set us up with engineers to live with if they had an opening in their house. So if that does happen to you, definitely make sure that the guy that you were living with, or girl, is compatible with you. I didn't spend enough time on my first one. I barely spoke to the guy. Would not recommend. Definitely thoroughly search through what they are.
Good to know.
Learning from poor experiences.
Julie asked a pretty good question down there.
Yeah, I'm thinking on that one right now.
So I know I know the things that I've, I guess, kind of gotten asked at interviews and just had on my resume is definitely emphasizing like the clubs that you're involved in. AIAA is huge because we are in aerospace, and it is the world's largest professional aerospace organization. A lot of people are incredibly familiar with AIAA, whether they're involved in it or not. It shows that you are interested and passionate and excited to meet other people in the aerospace community. The other thing would just be projects. So if you have any experience on long-term projects, working with different teams, communicating with other people, kind of doing your part of your work type thing, definitely always gets used. I've also noticed that like they are interested in things that are slightly different. Like I've gotten questions on previous resumes where I had a lot of things about swimming, and I swam 20 plus hours a week. And so I actually got questions on like, what do you learn for like time commitment and all of that type of stuff. And so just being involved in different activities shows that you know how to manage your time and work in different things and have interest outside of school and that type of a thing, as well as minors. I've known that they definitely have some, if they're not like a stereotypical minor, or even if they are, they definitely kind of ask like, why'd you choose it and what have you gotten to use with it so far, and that type of thing. So whatever you're involved in, whatever you're interested in, all of that stuff, just put that on your resume, because it shows who you are and what you're interested in, and who you put your time towards. So just be honest and answer their questions honestly and that type of thing, and it should go pretty well.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with what Carissa said. I think one of the things that I like to push on my resume specifically during an interview is not necessarily specific projects. Even though I do have, or I used to have a few specific projects that I completed, whether it was on my own or through school, but rather the skills that you get from that. Hardcore data analytics using MATLAB, wind tunnel testing, whatever it is, your lab experience, your project experience, things that you might get from previous jobs that you've had, communication, and really kind of build your resume, tailor it around to you being able to sell yourself as a candidate because you have these qualifications that other people might not have, and you got it. And then sometimes they'll ask you more about it, sometimes they won't. Definitely don't put in your resume that you cannot back up, because in my experience they will ask you everything, and if you have something on there that you can't really talk about, they'll know. Whether or not that's important is up to the position that you're applying for. But another thing, a bit of advice that I would like to give is, when interviews can be very intimidating, right? Personally, they are for me. I found it best to just come with your personality. Like, don't sit there in the chair and talk to this person, streamline everything, answer all their questions. You can be lively, you can crack a smile, like you can ask them, what's going on before the interview even starts. It doesn't have to be straightforward and then 15 minutes straight interview questions and then done after that. They don't, most places are looking for you to stand out, and you're not going to stand out if you don't come. Everybody's got a great personality. You just want to be confident in what you have to offer, both as yourself, as an engineer, as a person, because it'll work out if confidence is key.
Actually, going back, piggybacking off of what Joey said, you definitely do want to be lively and, be yourself in an interview. And for that reason, kind of gauge what you think about your interviewer, like interview them
Absolutely.
back in that sense. Because some of the best interviews I've had have just been because you literally just had a good conversation and it was also an interview, rather than having it be just the straight questions. And so I know, at least for certain jobs, I've ended up choosing one that I just had a better interview with, and it might not be in as good of a location as I'd like it to be, and all that type of stuff. The people is what makes the difference, and those are the people that you're going to be spending a lot of your time with. And so when you're in an interview, see how it is from their end as well, not just be yourself and then see how they react, in that sense too. I guess it sounded a little weird at the end, but it definitely makes a difference about who you're working with and who you're spending your time with. And so don't forget about yourself in the interview process as well.
Also, I think my greatest tip is show excitement and commitment, both in your interview and in your resume. So if you have a lot of things that show that you like aerospace and it makes you excited on your resume, then if you can translate that into your interview as well, it makes it fly by. You don't even really think about it happening. And it's a pretty universal sign when somebody's excited. You can tell just by their facial expressions. So if you can genuinely show that you're excited about a position, then that it's a big plus for you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so I guess we can go ahead and end it here, but since we're a little bit over 7:30, but if anybody else has questions, feel free to stick around. But yeah, thank you to our 4 panelists for sharing everything that you guys learned.
Yeah, thank you for inviting. If you guys would like to stick around and watch me cook my chicken, you're welcome to join.
Cooking with
Rachel Ray out here.
Oh, great.
You're feeling it great.
What do I do it again? I missed it.
Okay. Needs to heat up.
Has anybody had that like Asian noodle bowl that they have at the